Hey guys, hi there. So, it's Eline. In case you weren't aware of that, my hair is a terrible mess. I don't know why that is, other than I have been doing some housework actually. Cleaning windows. Not like 100 windows, just a few of the more conspicuous windows. So, I decided I wanted a second cup of coffee, which is this one, and I wanted to talk to you guys because there have been developments. Oh my god. I'm just hoping I don't look too bad. I have slept like for 15 hours at a stretch or something like that, ridiculous, because I sometimes make cocoa with actual valerian ground up in a mortar, valerian, lavender, and cardamom mixed into the cocoa. And I don't think I really overdid it that much, but I sleep like I am, like it's just the end of the world. It's kind of a sleep or something. And so I think that's actually good for me. The other thing is that I think it's kind of embarrassing to talk about, of course. There have been developments in the bedroom. Will you believe it? High time. It's been years since both of us were, actually getting the groove on, so to speak. And so that's a big change. It took a solstice and an eclipse for Mister to get his groove on. So here's to that eclipse, which we didn't see in the Netherlands here, but it was visible early Sunday. So it looks like early morning on Sunday past. So today is Tuesday, the 23rd, I think, of June 2020. Oh, it's so nice when it's hot. And yeah, so actually, it looks like the tarot cards helped my husband also quite a bit to let go of certain ideas. I'm not completely sure into how much detail I want to go, except not in any detail. Don't worry. I'm not going to go into any detail. I'm not going to go graphic. I'm not going to go, very explicit or anything. I won't, because I find that just as embarrassing as you do. And on the other side, I think it's completely private anyway. So, what I do want to stress is that my husband's turned 60 this year. There was no real health reason for him to not, feel completely comfortable and confident in these things, in these matters, other than, sorry for the shuffling, but I just have to get this right here. Other than his vanished twin adventure, which has been very much on our minds. The link between the underbelly and the vanished twin situation is that there was a lot of unprocessed emotion there for him, and I have helped quite a bit, at least mapping out what were the things that needed his attention. And by himself, I don't think he would have figured out 10% of the whole story. So there's that. I am wondering to what extent in the world, whenever, of course, there's like this taboo about men not performing in the bedroom, which is like a myth by itself, because, well, all that's linked, of course. And there's, I think there's a great huge myth about men always wanting to perform, men always needing to blah and blah, all the self-image, a lot of which it turns out is also supported by money-making industries that I'm not going to go into any detail about, because you know what I'm talking about. That support. There's a construct there that I find massively uncomfortable. I mean, to the extent that I go dig my nails into my own flesh here. So uncomfortable as to the the way it looks almost like there's a subliminal code going on where men are basically incapacitated in many ways. I'm always reminded of a quote which I have used at my husband also a couple of times already, also in the past weekend, which is from Asterix. I don't have the book here. It's a comic, French comic, that I've got the whole collection of, because I think they're hilarious, and I grew up with them because I was born in the Netherlands, but we moved around and we lived in Switzerland when I was a little kid for quite a while, and that's when they came out, those first comic books, and it's about this the Asterix and Obelix. You know who I mean? Okay, so a Gaulish warrior heroes who are having all these weird adventures. There's one episode where they are in the army, in the Roman army. I think it's in the north of Africa where they are stationed at that time, kind of enrolled because they enrolled there because they had to rescue a friend of theirs who also got in the army and who basically got kidnapped into the Roman army. And then they're given food from the army, and it says the more powerful the army, the worse the food is. And then the other guy says, he tastes the food and he says, like, I didn't know that the army was this powerful. So, you're supposed to get that. That's, of course, how bad the food is. And then it says somewhere in a footnote, it keeps the soldiers in a bad mood. Ça maintient les guerriers de mauvaise humeur. Well, I am so sorry, but I think that's what's happening to the world at large in general, and to very many of us. And, there are things a person needs. I have had needs for years, and they're very simple. I just need my husband to be in my life, really, physically, to be, I need us to be connected in that way. And it wasn't happening. And I suppose that the other side to the whole, how that feels, the other side really is the Shakti and the Tumo work that I've done. Because my energy wasn't being, what's the word? Diverted, yes, thank you, into the channel where normally babies are the result. Or they wouldn't be now, probably, but although I don't trust my hormones for, any further than out of the room. Because if I go unprotected, I'm pregnant. I'm still fairly confident that it wouldn't take that much of a miracle for me to be pregnant. I'm not sure the kid would be healthy. I am 54 years of age, so yeah. But that's how fertile my body still wants to be, even though it's not possible anymore. So, yeah. But the energy has been diverted into the Shakti work. It's the same energy. So that's important, right? There's all sorts of important stuff going on here that has to do with society, with how people treat each other, how we believe, how we are, all of us, men and women, are led to believe in pharaohs, plastic pharaohs of potency and power and whatchamacallit, that don't really get you anywhere. And it's an illusion, and it's a created illusion. The more I think about this, it's a money-making dream that keeps people unhappy, that keeps people incapacitated, and makes us worry, makes us feel insecure, makes us feel like we have no worth. A lot of that is orchestrated, not by one person or by necessarily, would you call that, a sect or a cult or any, like a conspiracy idea type of a group of powerful people necessarily. It's just a historical construct, that I think. That's what I think anyway. That's been handed down to us, and it still works like that. So that's nasty. On the other hand, I don't think it's always particularly useful to think of any group of people to be responsible for that in one, period of time or in a particular area in the world. Because this type of injustice and this type of imbalance is a fact of life as a human being. And because our lives aren't how they could be, which is what you wonder if you're a happy person by nature and it's springtime or summertime and you go outside and there's butterflies and flowers everywhere, you wonder, why am I making such a mess of this? Why is this so difficult? It's difficult because it has to be difficult. That's my idea these ways. I've always felt this way. I've always thought that it's difficult because then you go look for solutions. You go figure things out. You start to think about things. I know for sure if I hadn't had the problems that I've had since I was 12, I would have sat at a coffee house outside with a view of a lake somewhere, and I would never have had a single thought go through my brain, ever. Because why? No problem. So now, instead of doing that, I actually get some work done. And so we actually contribute to each other, and everybody contributes something somewhere. And I wish that many people would be more aware of what it is that you contribute, just even if it's just a little video that you made, or, you brought somebody a couple of flowers, or you went and did their windows for them, or you did your own windows like I did just now. That's important. Everything is important, and it all has value, and it's all there for a reason. So the other thing that I've been sort of plowing bravely onwards with is this one. That's how big it is. This is part 1 of all that over there. And it says the Kingdom of the Netherlands in the Second World War. It's a very famous, very long series of books. And I believe there are 14 volumes in total. And these 5 here are about the relationship between the Netherlands and Indonesia before and during the war, the Second World War. So I was going to check and see how many pages this one actually has at the end. So this is just part 1 of the introduction, so to speak. 543 pages. Okay, just this one. I'm about nearly halfway. No, not completely nearly, but sort of halfway in there. So I'm making progress. I am actually finding this possible to read. It's a tad old-fashioned, so to speak. But because my mum grew up as a child, she was born and she grew up before the war in Indonesia, and my grandparents were there, and my granddad worked as a school teacher in Indonesia for all those years. I think he went there in 28, 27, something like that. I have a certain, I have an affinity. There's a relationship for me, with this subject. I have a fondness for anything that's Indonesian, which I inherited from those people. I've never been there myself. So it's worth it. It's worth spending the time. There's a lot of data to be processed, and not all of it gets processed. There's quite a lot of, numbers and dates and figures and statistics and things, which I tend to go like, okay, so, quickly pass through the page here because, whatever. But I do pick up on more strongly what I've learned so far, certainly, is that there was a big, huge cultural difference between the Dutch, immigrants, like colonials, like I descend from on that side of my family, and the natives, the native Indonesian peoples, plural. And it's not easy to map out what the difference really means. And there's been a lot of kindness that is less easy to report on other than in a very personal way between those people. One thing I realized yesterday while I was reading was that my mother grew up to a certain extent. I inherited the way she grew up as a little girl, so to speak, because she connected strongly, like many people who grew up as kids in a tropical country. She connected very strongly with the nature around her, with the trees and the animals, and the way it felt and the way it smells and what it looks like, and the massive loads of flowers and the perfume and the fruits and all that. She did not connect as much with people who actually were, all around her, also in her household, who looked after her. She didn't connect personally that much, or because it was not encouraged. There was a lack of support there for her, treating her nursemaid, I suppose you could call her, exactly in the same way. She never said, that I can recall, that they moved from one house to another. They moved at one point from Sulawesi to Sumatra, and she never said anything about missing the old people that looked after her in the old house. So there's things like that. It's little details like that I go like, hey, all of a sudden there's a little missing piece there that I've never heard my mother talk about, because she was disconnected in a way, in a similar manner that I was disconnected, because I grew up with her only, certainly after 1974, when I was abducted, kidnapped by my own mother from the foster family I was staying at the time, because my parents were in a divorce and a dramatic divorce situation. Afterwards, 74, 79 was a period that I stayed with my mother in Holland, in different places, moving around, once every 2 years or so. We moved house. And so I moved house a million times. I've always kind of blamed myself, if you like, for not connecting to people and places and areas properly. But you don't. After a couple of times, it's just not, you give up. You just don't do it anymore, because you don't see the point, and you're going to leave anyway, again, soon, somehow, sometime. So but I never really realized that my mom went through the same thing because of the social distancing that was going on, if you like, in the early 40s between the colonials and the native, Sulawesi people that she grew up with. She saw them every day. They looked after her, they gave her food, they looked after her in all sorts of ways. And her brother, same, There is such a huge pile of things that I know nothing about that I'm interested in. So we just plow bravely on. I managed to obtain these books in a second-hand thrift store, for less than €1 a piece, considering that the writer of these is a historian, a very well-known Dutch historian. I'm shocked to say that this has not been translated into English. Which is not something I intend to go and do, because even though I might potentially be able to do it, I wonder very much whether there'd be a market for that type of thing, and it'd be such a lot of work. I remember reading at some point that this writer he spent, was it 32 years? I think he put 32 years of his life into the composition of this, of the series, of the 14, 14 volumes in total. So there's all that. Big, sometimes the themes are even too big and just the ideas are all over the place. And it's a time of planets going retrograde. Mercury's retrograde, Neptune's retrograde, I think Jupiter and Saturn, yes, or Pluto, all retrograding at the moment. So yeah, I was hesitating about whether to come on, whether to vlog at all, because I don't want to leave you guys too long without, showing my face and telling you about the things. And apparently it's these kinds of videos that get the most views after all. I have been doing cards, like I said. Tarot's been instrumental for both of us doing all sorts of the whole dark significance, what do you call that? Dark interpretations of cards. That has been huge. That has been massive. How it's like this massive epiphany, except it's not just one epiphany. It's like every card gets its epiphany by itself. Every one of the 78 tarot cards, gets like a makeover where there are endless new perspectives coming to us, and each time it's like this is just one of a series of 17 or 77 possible different angles to look at this one card. It's insane. And so I found that really helpful. I found especially my own willingness and even desire to be as straight about this as possible, to be kind of scary, and to be kind of like, okay, so please don't exaggerate, don't overdo this, but then on the other hand, it's what I'm looking for, it's what I want. And I have to finish my coffee because it's still nice. What I've been doing is I've put a couple of videos up already where like a dark connection spread, or it started off with the dark deck interviews, and then all of a sudden I got these weird cards which were like telling me like, okay, so there's another side to this whole thing. How, if I have this question, how is this card going to illuminate that in a manner that's actually shadow or negative, if you like. And so I made the ghost tarot, which is in here. I've even used my little skull, little contraptions. You won't be able to see that. Well, here, that's an obvious one that actually has a clear skull face in there. There's 16 of these, and I've used these as well, where I pick 4 of them as a sort of a separate oracle mode and put them in a square like that for each of the directions of the compass points. And then that actually has another dimension to it, so you have a process going from one coin to the other, going from south to north, for example. My husband actually thought of a parallel to the south and north nodes in the horoscope, using them like that. And then the going east to west dimension like that as another sort of a more physical manifestation, or like the ideas that you carry around with you, which are often unconscious, your assumptions and things like that, as another dimension. So you have like a physical framework inside which you pull your cards for whatever spread it is you're doing. So I thought of another dark spread, which I will probably make a separate video about when I have actually done it. I was going to go do a dark connection spread for yourself, which is like not, I suppose there's quite a number of darker, spreads out there where you can look at, try to figure out what the things are that are really in your way, or that you are carrying around with you without really knowing that they're there, you know. So that's a big one. The dark self spread that I've got cooked up so far. I haven't really tried it out yet because I'm sort of waiting for the time when I'm, you know, feeling comfortable enough to go and do that, because you have to be, it has to be, there has to be some kind of a balance for me to I'm not gonna do that when I'm all over the place, because the things, you know, because of all that. So I put I showed this already, but I'm still quite proud of it. So my booklet with all the nice beads and sparklies like that, that's getting a bit more filled up with you know, card meanings like so, and some of them still don't have a meaning, and others are cards that are actually shown up a few times already, and so they you know, have more each time that a card shows up in one of these darker spreads, and I have to sort of think of what the idea is that's coming out of that card at that particular point in that spread at that time, with those questions in mind or that context in mind. Each time I get at some kind of a new level, or why is this card here, you know, the result of that goes in here, and so that works really well. And this is just like such a, oh, it's so amazing. I'm so glad I actually went ahead and found those silly little, you know, like the thumbnails. I had to go to some lengths to find myself my file of those, and I haven't got a mini Visconti Sforza because, you know, to me, I am not a deck collector, obviously. Apparently, I am not a deck collector necessarily. There are a few decks that pass by on the YouTube here and there that I go like, okay, so that's really interesting. I watched Simon Hermit Cave's video on the alchemical tarot, and I go like instantly, oh, that's cool. And what's that symbol? And there's an alchemical, you know, thing that I don't really know very well. I'm very much into that, but yeah, it's also related to Shakti and Tumo also. So there's, in terms of Shakti and Tumo, that's a whole different ball game. There's a choice always when you're, what am I, so 27 minutes, dear Lord. I'm going to buckle this up pretty quickly, but I do want to refer to my Shakti Tumo practice a bit, because it's part of my life. It's quite strongly, it's fundamental to a lot of the changes that have been going on recently. I noticed, striking with a couple of people, not just with my husband, but also with another friend of mine, I noticed that I have become a lot less passive in, I'm less scared. Also, I sometimes feel as scared as I used to, but I'm not passive anymore. And I don't let other people completely fill in whatever it is that was supposed to be, that's supposed to happen. And sometimes that leads to maybe not necessarily conflict, but it leads to incomprehension or lack of, you have to communicate more or differently. I think that my newfound assertiveness, if you like, is a result of the Tumo. Absolutely. And like I've said a couple of times already in the Tumo reports, maybe I should do one separately, because I've been saying that for a couple of times already, but it's just been really hard to put the words in, and to, if I don't vlog, it's because I don't have the juice. I swear. It's not because I'm, you know, gallivanting off with, sometimes I'm gallivanting off with my husband, but not, not at the time that much. The Tumo changes us subconsciously quite a bit as well. But there's a choice, and that's what I was going to point out, or to talk about for a second here, is that there's there's a choice between sex and tumo, I think. Not 100%. It's not like you have to live a celibate, 100% celibate life. It's not like you have to be a monk or pretend, to live a virginal life, a completely sexless life in that way. That's not the case. It's a choice what you're going to use the energy for. If the energy is used in sex, it disappears. It dissipates. It has been used. It has been transformed, and it cannot be used in that way again. So I don't think it's bad to have sex on and off, bits here and there. But there's a fine line where at some point you go like, okay, so I'm getting uptight about things, I'm getting irritable, I need to do that, go away and do the thing. And then there's always a next day. And the Shakti energy comes back always, which is something they don't tell you, right? They tell you that you have to live a celibate life. They tell you sex is bad anyway. In general, and it is the only thing is that once it has been used, it is gone. So that's why I think it's presented this way, because we want to be this ruler of our own lives. We want to rule and control our own energy the whole time, and that's not happening if you have a life where sex actually has a role to fulfill. So, but there's a choice, and if you choose to not engage in that, and you engage in tumo instead, or in Shakti practices, or in Kundalini practices of whatever nature, chakra stabilizing, healing of chakras, all that works with Kundalini energy. If anything's really happening, it's Kundalini that's doing the work. And you need the energy to be available. And there's a certain supply, but it's always supplied to you again. So I think you don't have to, for the energy, for the Shakti energy to be transmuted inside your body in a change in your life, to transform your life, you have to be willing. So of course, obviously, that's something that will happen after you're 40 or something like that. It's when you're young, sex will be more important. It's normal. However, for women, if that means that you are going to have babies, then you will be very busy. And I never had any babies, so I can do the Shakti work and the Tuma work now at the right time in my life and have all sorts of newfound, like I said, assertiveness, but also a lot more of a direct connection with nature, which is fabulous and which is magical, which is what I want, which is what I need, which I have needed always, and I have always had a hard time finding. I'm getting things that I was always looking for all my life. I am getting that I can process my own emotions a lot better. Yay that. I mean, that's a massive deal. I am sure that if more people out there could, get a picture of how much better you can process emotions that belong to you, how much better you are at accepting what is there because you don't auto-destruct anymore. Thanks to Tumo, if you could get that picture, you would be 20 times as interested. And not only you, but hundreds of thousands of people out there would choose this path, and I don't understand really almost why it is so difficult, why it is so hard to figure out how this works. And once you've got it figured out, once you know how the Tumo works, it's easy. it's like it's all there. It's a natural process. You only have to make sure the Shakti goes there instead. And then it's a matter of letting it do its thing, not messing with it and just sitting there and paying attention and letting it do its thing. And whoosh, there you go. And the world is yours. The world inside also is yours. I find that there's another little bit of a choice there, because I've had issues with my cat. My cat is old and he's dementia. So he gets phases, especially in the evening, where he's uncomfortable and he starts yammering. And he howls like a werewolf. He's a werecat, and sometimes in the middle of the night. I made a video about that a while ago also. I've given him a rose quartz pendant. He's managed to break the thread, or he managed to almost choke himself on a little collar that we had gotten him, thinking that it would be a better idea. So no, it wasn't. So back onto a piece of rope now that's just knotted around his neck, and it doesn't look like it's bothering him at the moment at all. The rose quartz calms him down significantly. Each time he's gone without the rose quartz for a couple of days, after a while, after like 4, 5, 6 days or so, he starts yammering again and howling and shouting and cursing the universe and himself in it. He drives me nuts. So there's been phases over the past month or two, where that was bad. And he'd broken his thread or anything, and he was without the rose quartz. And the difference between him with the stone or without is massive. It's like there's like 10% only of the noise coming out of him, and of the discomfort. Only 10%. So it's still there, and he's still got a problem. And he's 14 years old, and he's had a bit of a problematic life always. So I don't blame him. But there are phases where, especially in the middle of the night, I was clawing at the walls for, what with the noise and him not letting me sleep and things like that. So there were moments where I had to realize, and that's another thing that's why I'm talking about this, where the tumo was significant for me, is that I realized that I was making things very much worse for myself each time by reacting to my own anger in ways that are completely programmed, that are completely understandable from how I grew up, etc., etc. But I can also choose there to not go into this reactive mode, not go banging on the walls, especially inside my own brain, and going completely ballistic and out of control and depressed and whatever, Instead, go the other way, which means, okay, so there's an origin to the discomfort I am feeling myself. Let me accept my own discomfort. Not necessarily what has caused the discomfort, whatever that was, and there's quite a number of things that caused me discomfort when I was, because that's where I come from. And it caused other people, there were things that caused other people before me discomfort for generations on end. I inherited a piece of discomfort. That's it, really. I'm not necessarily accepting any of that, but I'm accepting how I feel at that time. And it's like a 180 degrees change of course, where I believe the tumo makes it all so much clearer. It opens it all up. It sort of separates out all the different parts of the problem that you're in at the time. And you get to choose. You get to say it doesn't mean, it doesn't make the choice for me. It doesn't transform me into this peaceful angel of a person. I still have to make the choice myself, which is good, which I like. So there's that. I don't think I've got enough material or new ideas or new approaches about the Tumo as such, which is why I don't vlog about it. I don't do progress reports at the moment. I don't really manage to do anything other than occasional witchy check-ins with bits and things, because that's what my life looks like at the moment. It's basically bits and things and cards. Whenever I've got something, like a spread or something, I will put that up separately. So yeah, I think that's it for today, guys. I had all sorts of other thoughts. I've been writing quite a bit. Actually, I have got to use this retrograde period to reread a lot of, because there's like this much of printed stuff that I've written where things are coming together. All sorts of new ideas also to do with the whole vanished twin business again. And yeah, it's fascinating, powerful stuff. I think the whole vanished twin situation is a lot more important for humans than we really know. I am going to stop here and leave it at this. Thank you for watching, for coming along, and wish me luck with all this here, because some of it will be, tougher to read. So far, I haven't had any traumatizing passages necessarily. It was a different time. I enjoy reading about history anyway, and about different cultures and things like that, especially if I'm connected to it. So, that's it. Thank you for watching. See you then. Okay. See you next time. Ciao.